2022. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Outside this evening. and other parts of the agenda is action and information items. When members of the board certify that only lawful matters were discussed in closed session, please answer by roll call vote.
McMurtry,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Harrow,
Yes.
and Burnett.
Yes.
I think you're supposed to call me too.
Oh. Okay.
Yes. I should introduce Ms. Baggett. This is her first time with us as our new clerk, and we're excited to have her and all that she will bring for us. Thank you for being here. If we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Back to sites recognitions.
For recognitions, I also was going to welcome and introduce Kim Bagby as our new clerk of the school board. She started at the school board office on July 1, which is a holiday, and then we had an off day and then a holiday. So she officially took her role in the office on July 5th. This is her first school board meeting. I told her it would be simple and that everyone would be nice to her. And it would be easy. So we're excited to have Kim join us at the school board office. So welcome tonight, Kim, and it will be easy and everyone will be nice.
Yes, ma'am. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, I would move that the Mosley be moved after the consent agenda.
All right, and then the financial reports that are added, that are at your place for this evening should also be added. Hearing none others, all those in favor of accepting the financial additions and moving the Mosley presentation to just behind the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Public announcements, August the 8th, school board meeting at St. Clair Walker at 6:30. August the 8th, new teachers report. August 15th, convocation, all staff will report. August 18th is the open house at all schools from 4 to 7, and August the 22nd is the first day of school. That got here in a hurry. The floor is open for public comments.
Mike Nez from Locust Hill. I'm here on behalf of the NAACP. Don Moore asked me to say some words. On behalf of the NAACP Middlesex branch, we would like to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to use the St. Clair Walker building on June 17th for the Motown show, and the Middlesex High School property on June 18th for the Juneteenth festival. We would also like to recognize Mr. Mark Hall at St. Clair Walker for his help and assistance. He was absolutely wonderful to work with. And as always is the case, Mrs. Fleet was wonderful with all her assistance at the high school. And we cannot forget Mr. Dustin Harris for his amazing assistance during the power outage and all throughout the paving project. Now, I can speak to the power outage. He saved the day. We had this auditorium full of people and waiting on getting the power restored, and we had entertainment, but not hardly anybody left. We got here just in a nick of time. And during the paving process, I was concerned because we had all that rain. We came through and the crew came through and we were able to use the parking facility as planned. So thank you very much. It was a big success and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Public comment is closed. Board members, other reports? Mercer, anything? Okay, Mr. Reed,
No,
I know everybody's quiet in the summer. Mr. Hare, anything?
no.
Dr. Henry?
Yeah, I will have a meeting of the Chesapeake Bay Governor's School this Thursday. First meeting under the new director. That's all I have.
And the regional special ed meeting will be at the end of July, and so I'll have a report in August. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Any questions about it? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we are ready for our Mosley presentation.
All right, I will introduce Stephen Halsey with Mosley Architects. We've been working closely with Stephen, our central office team, and he is going to give you an overview of when and where we started and where we are up to this point.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Stephen Halsey again with Mosley Architect. I guess I'll just say point it forward. Let's start that first. Here you go back. We appreciate being selected to help you all out with the master plan studies. A big part of our work is doing foundational studies like this to help school divisions kind of assess needs and kind of dream for the future. So we've been involved for the bulk of this year doing a series of work. Tonight's really kind of the first report back to the board about where we are. And we anticipate another report back to you all at the August meeting to kind of begin the flow through the process. Really tonight, I'm going to give you a summary of what we've been doing over the past 6 or 7 months. We've conducted a facility assessment, and I'll get through that in just a minute. Facility assessment. Done a lot of community engagement meeting with Ms. Fleet and Dr. Seitz and the entire team, and then put together 3 initial options that just for some feedback tonight. Really, where we're going to go from this point is start to put together the final document and start to put some planning budget numbers on the 3 options that have been created right now, and give you all a lot of robust material and some cost information that can be used for the community and in the decision-making process. So that's really the purpose of the entire study. What we started with was the conditions assessment. We had our entire team come out to the high school on a number of occasions. We have full service in-house. We have architecture, interiors, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, engineering, structural engineering. So we did a really thorough walkthrough of the building, looking at the condition of the building. Looking at all these major items, we got our food service consultant come out too and look at food service consultant. We looked at building finishes, architectural envelope, code compliance, ADA compliance, those sorts of things. Structural systems, mechanical, plumbing, electrical. And really the findings are the building, the bones of the building are really in pretty good shape, very good shape. The old part, the original part of the building, and then the 2002 edition. The athletic addition in the back is kind of what it is. It's kind of a prefabricated metal building structure with metal panels. Some wear and tear on that building, but really the bones of that building, if you were to look at some different ways to use that building. And we've got some ideas that have emerged from the study working with the team here about what that might be at some point in the future. But really in terms of structure and the infrastructure, we're at a very good starting point in terms of looking at ways to improve and bring the facility forward in terms of an educational environment. A series of kind of foundational background information. So not only were we looking at the building from a kind of systems and infrastructure perspective, we also looked at the building from a variety of ways of where the square footage is located, where circulation patterns are located. We built the entire building in our building information modeling system, so we have a really good kind of blueprint, if you will. So we've inputted existing building systems, rooms, roof structure, those kind of things. So we have a really good database of information that we could use to start looking at the way the building might be used going forward in the future, and also to assist us in putting some planning budget numbers together for consideration going forward. This is all information that'll also be in the report. This is just really foundational information to help us understand the building a little bit better. Just documenting where the original building was and some of those early additions. The 1976 edition in the back, that's primarily, for athletics and some CTE functions. And then 2002 edition that our firm actually did, the two-story addition. That's the most recent addition to the campus. We also documented what's being taught where from a departmental perspective. So we spent a lot of time with Ms. Fleet and her team and understanding how the buildings are being used today. So we want to understand a little bit about what's really working for Ms. Fleet and her staff and her instructional team, and look for opportunities for where space might not be fully utilized in its use, and looking for opportunities about maybe some ways the building might be reconfigured as we start to understand what might want to be taught there going forward. So we, again, just documented the department layout and what's being taught where currently. We also look at space and how it's being used and the size of spaces. And we like to compare when we're looking at these studies, especially for looking at potential renovation projects and modernization projects, looking at the size of the existing spaces and to understand, are there spaces that might not meet current VDOE guidelines, spaces that might be in excess of VDOE guidelines, again, some spaces that might have opportunities for repurposing or who might not be underutilized. So again, a color-coded kind of heat map, if you will, of some spaces that are slightly undersized, spaces that we have some space to work with. There, the kind of the light green box there in the middle is really kind of the sweet spot for VOE guidelines. They recommend anywhere between 700 and 750 square feet for 4 classrooms. So that's kind of what we're looking at. And again, that's kind of the heat map of how space is currently distributed within the building. We also look at just circulation paths, and are there areas that might need to be looked at in terms of navigating different floor levels. There's 6 different elevations within the entire campus inside the building. And you can see those noted there in terms of using the existing original building as kind of the baseline of 0, anywhere from 26 inches above that baseline, which is the stage and the auditorium, to 46 inches below that baseline, which is the 76 edition with the athletics and CT components. Then we look at those floor areas too, and look at areas, next slide please, where there existing infrastructure within the building that navigates those floor areas. And we look at those areas, are they ADA and code compliant, and are they not? This is just to document areas that when a project emerges from this, this will give folks some idea about some areas that might need to be resolved in terms of providing some code compliant access, and really those 3 main areas. So we have a fully accessible building and campus for those who might have some mobility issues. We also spent a lot of time talking about modernization and really what's happening in K-12 throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. We do a tremendous numbers of schools as half of our business. We do anywhere from 35 to 40% of all the schools in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So it's a very important part of our business and gives us a lot of insight into what's happening in other localities across the Commonwealth. So we look at trends through 4 main lenses. And this is really what we see happening across the Commonwealth and even across the region. We practice from South Carolina up to Maryland, so we have a good idea of what's happening really across the Eastern Seaboard. Really 4 main areas that we see education happening to now and as we look over the next 15 to 20 years. Collaboration is very important. We're starting to see a big movement in terms of students working together in small group work, and also larger group work, having 2 spaces for 2 classrooms or 2 classes to come together. It's also important to provide space for teachers to collaborate, and that's something that's missing right now in a lot of schools as well. The cross-curricular instruction, again, having space for 2 classes to come together. You might have history and math, and in that history content area, you might be teaching something in the 1700s, and there might be an opportunity to look at mathematicians in the 1700s, and is there instruction that might come out of that cross-curricular instruction? And also the need for a variety of spaces. We're seeing, especially as we emerge from the pandemic, the need for more individualized instruction. So we're not teaching to kind of the middle common denominator. We're providing spaces where we teach students who have some struggles and challenges, and also need spaces to to let those kids soar who are accelerating and everything in between. So that really requires us to look at schools in a different way and providing spaces that can be flipped throughout the day and also spaces that are more flexible and adaptable. So that goes to the next flexibility piece there below. Spaces where everything can move and everything can be reconfigured throughout the course of a day. Also, that flexibility also provides student choice in where they might sit and how that space might be used. Spaces that can be configured in different ways. There's also a big movement. We're starting to see a decline in college enrollment and an increase in the need for high school programs who have either dual enrollment programs or actually emerge from high school with trade certificates so they can really have real world skills as they exit the high school environment. So CTE is a very big important, again, some of the same concepts, having spaces that can be configured throughout the course of the day, depending on what's being taught there. Furniture that supports that flexibility and supports the teaching of those skills. And also services and support areas that really support the program, whether it's a masonry program or HVAC program or technology or a welding program, making sure we have adequate support space for supplies and materials that are used to support those programs. And kind of a common component to all three of those really kind of future-proofing spaces is furniture that really supports student choice and having flexible furniture in the classroom, having furniture that when students move, we all know the students can't sit still throughout the course of the day. But having, if students come in to the classroom during the course of the day, they might need to have furniture that they can move and wiggle. They might have furniture where they had a rough night, they stayed up all night studying, they might want a soft piece of furniture. That furniture really supports improved discipline because students are motivated to get to the classroom earlier so they can have their choice of that piece of furniture. And also furniture that supports movement and configuration. So the teacher can configure that classroom during the course of the day that really supports what he or she might be trying to teach. So this is the lens that we really started our work with really the core group and team here as we started to develop some options. Another key piece of this is community engagement. And on March 15th, I believe it was, we held a community engagement session. We asked Dr. Sykes to put together a really wide net of stakeholders here in the community, just not teachers and parents, but business owners, philanthropic leaders, really people who really engage the high school at different levels, whether it's through philanthropy or providing jobs for recent graduates. So we thought that was very important to kind of cast that wide net. So this was really the agenda. We spent about 3 hours together that night and working through a series of exercises. We had introduced our team and had everybody introduce themselves and really what they were bringing to the stakeholder group in terms of what they did for a living or really their interest in the study. We reviewed the existing conditions. We had completed our existing conditions assessment at that point, kind of gave an overview like we did tonight of really what we found in terms of the bones being really good for consideration of future projects. We discussed in a little more detail the current and future trends we saw in education design. We had lots of examples of spaces that we're doing and other folks are doing that we support some of those 4 kind of key trends that we saw happening across the Commonwealth. We went through an exercise called idea mining, where we prompted the group with 4 questions. We wanted to extract information from the group about goals of the project or the study, some of the characteristics and space characteristics and what might be taught. I went through a voting exercise to create a little bit of consensus within the group about where the study might want to go and really what their vision for a reimagined Middlesex High School might be. We then divided the group, the larger group, into a small group and facilitated a number of small group discussions where we really charged the small groups to focus on you bringing your particular lens to the group, where there's a business owner, a community college representative, a philanthropic organization. What needs to be taught at Middlesex High School in the future, and what are the spaces that might be needed to be provided to support that instruction? That would really give us, again, that unique lens into what might happen at Middlesex High School going forward. We then charged the small groups to report back their work together so we could capture all that information and really see, understand what each small group had in terms of the focus of their discussion. Then we wrapped up and then next steps. So I think there are 3 slides in a row that just kind of document what we did. These are some of the small group or the large group idea mining exercises. So each question had its own colored card. We gave everybody dots and super dots so they could go up and kind of stake their claims of some of the ideas that came out of that idea mining session. We then charged the group again in some of the small group work. So you can see some of the small group exercises there below. And then again, we asked a representative from each small group to report back what was discussed over that hour that the small group met together. Again, documenting skills. We asked them what are the skills that graduates Middlesex High School needed to have in the future. What types of curriculum might be needed to teach those skills, and some of the spaces that might needed to be provided to support that instruction. I think the last slide is just a panoramic shot of the entire group. We then took all that information, created a fun Wordle. So all the information that was captured, we put into a program. A lot of times in these studies, we like to take that information and create graphics that the school and the school division can be used for either websites or T-shirts or something to generate interest and buzz in the community. That's really one of the big purposes of a study like this is you'll have a lot of robust information that you can then take back to your constituents to really talk about, wow, this is a vision that can happen at Middlesex High School, and this might be some of the resources that might be needed to fulfill that vision. So just 3 different versions, and again, we'll provide all this information in the final study document that you all can use or not use. But it's 3 different kind of versions of that Wordle. But the important thing here is that the bigger the word, the bigger the phrase, the more votes that it got during the consensus building exercise. So you can see lots of passion about find your passion, flexible. We obviously needed to, whatever project that might emerge from this budget, creating energy for the project was very important. Some other words, community, safety, functional, adaptability, just some of the key buzzwords that came out of that idea mining. And again, these are just like 3 different graphics that could be used. Again, you just spit the words into a program, press a button, all these things come out. So it's kind of fun. I think that might be the last. We also looked at building programs. We documented what was being taught there now in terms of space. I think the next slide shows the spreadsheet. And we have Dr. Seitz and Dr. Bishop and Mr. Harrison and Ms. Fleet really did a deep dive into the program, what's being taught, and then some ideas about what wanted to be taught, some future curriculum that's being considered, and what kind of spaces that might be needed. So we put together a current curriculum, and then we put together a new curriculum, and then our right size program. So you'll see that in the first 2 options that we created, one is to provide the spaces that are on the right side of the program, but not right sizing some of those classrooms. And then another option, right size those classrooms. So it's a little more invasive option in terms of the renovation. But that was really kind of the roadmap for us as we started to develop options during that phase. We now get to some of the master plan options. We looked at the site and then ended up landing on 3 options right now that could be included in the final report. So the site plan really focused on looking at how the site's being used now, and also certainly being respectful of the tremendous community investment in their athletic complex that has been made over the last 5 or 6 years. So that was kind of sacred ground. We weren't looking at trying to unwind or undo really any of that. That's obviously working very well for the community. The real purpose of this was to look at ways to free up some potential site near the building where we could start to look at some potential areas for additions that emerged from the master plan option. And really required us to look at, was there another location that might make sense for the tennis courts? So that was looking at knowing that there's a lot of traffic that comes into the site off Gloucester Road. There's a fantastic practice field that's in great shape there. As you come in there, there's a lot of community traffic that comes into the athletic complex off Gloucester Road. We looked at, was there a possibility, maybe relocating the tennis courts and providing some additional community parking, and really starting to look at the access off Gloucester Road as a little more prominent athletic entrance. Also to take some of the stress off General 4 Highway as well. So what this allowed us to do is to look at potentially having a more prominent entrance off Gloucester Road, adding about 80 new parking spaces. Really, that could be community focused. If you're having a tennis match or a field hockey or soccer match, anything that might be happening in that field, providing some parking in that area as well. And what that allows us to do on the next slide is start to look at freeing up really that space just beside the support spaces where that interior weight room is by the gym, and really start to free up that space for potential building pad for some addition options and the options. This also allows us to start to designate parking areas too. So we have more of a dedicated visitor staff parking, and then where the tennis courts were located, that could potentially be an area for designated student parking. And it does give us a little more relief. There are currently 197 spaces there by the building proper. And freeing up the space, relocating the tennis courts allows us to have a modest increase up to about 225 parking spaces. So start to dig into the three options. Option one looks at implementing all spaces that were in the program, but not necessarily right sizing some of those existing core classrooms. So we'll go through some of the talking points. One thing that was consistent that we heard throughout the entire process was the need for an improved performance and public gathering spaces. That existing auditorium obviously has lots of challenges in terms of its size, lots of challenges with where it's located, being kind of landlocked there by the front of the building. It's a very difficult space, to try and add on to. That exterior walls, a load-bearing wall. So to try and add on to that existing auditorium, I think would be really challenging, and probably in the big scheme of things and looking at a fairly comprehensive renovation project at some point might not be cost effective. So, and as we looked at some of those trends that we talked about in terms of flexibility, collaboration, spaces for students to gather, classrooms to gather, we have done in a number of high schools a space called a forum, which is more of a flexible lecture space where you can do testing, you can do small performances, you can have multiple large classroom gatherings. And that existing auditorium space is really a perfect size without a lot of modification for that kind of function. So you'll see in the three options, that space has been designated in a forum space. It's a great place for school board meetings. It's again right off the main entrance. Maybe not a great place for 500 or 600 people to come together in a large kind of community event or community performance, but it would have a lot of use throughout the day. So some of the key points in option one. Again, this incorporates all of the new curriculum, kind of the CT spaces that were discussed about during the course of the planning process. Converts the auditorium into that forum space, and it has a nice relationship into a kind of rethought media center. Some ideas too, and these are some of the things that we'll show when we come back in August, or some interior and exterior renderings of what potential projects and spaces could look like. Again, just to generate some community interest and excitement about what could happen at a reimagined Middlesex High School. And from a security perspective, we do like to incorporate a security vestibule at the front door. So there's a security protocol. So the front door is locked throughout the day. There's a holding area. So once folks come into the building, they have to go through the main office before they're allowed to enter the rest of the school. So that's consistent within all three options. We've looked at reconfiguring, kind of cleaning up the big athletic building as well. Certainly a need for some improved team rooms, a need for a wrestling facility, kind of really reimagining the construction lab and that classroom. So you see that entire left side of that 1976 building kind of rethought. Again, we have team room access, so not only do they have access to the gymnasium, but also access to the exterior athletic components out back. So that's some of the bigger moves. And then you'll see really the biggest move, again, by relocating the tennis courts and reconfiguring parking. We created that area that the auditorium is shown there in that upper right-hand corner. It also allows us to create a more public entrance, after hours entrance, an opportunity for that to really kind of showcase athletics at Middlesex High School. It provides a comparable entrance into the building for athletics that you have now with that really great outdoor athletic facility. So there's some consistency that is an opportunity about how the public enters the athletic spaces. And again, the biggest thing is adding that 500-seat auditorium. So option two provides the same kind of bucket list of spaces, but it also starts to right size existing classrooms. So that's really the main difference between option one and option two. In terms of when we start to put together planning numbers, option one might be less money in terms of planning options because we're not really moving as many interior walls as we would in option two. Option two basically right sizes every space in the building and really establishes that baseline that every space is touched, every space is modernized, every space is right sized for current and future curriculum as we know it. And the second big thing in terms of option one and option two is providing some additional interior athletic space. So you'll see an auxiliary gym that's located between the gymnasium and the auditorium. That provides some additional practice space, additional instructional space for health and PE as well. And it also provides another space that can be used as a community asset. So another space for recreation basketball, recreation volleyball, those sorts of things. So again, the two main differences between option one and option two right sizes every instructional space that's not touched in option one and provides the auxiliary gym space between the gymnasium and the auditorium. Option three builds on option two, but what it also does is looking at in terms of future growth and modernization facilities, it looks at an option of bringing 8th grade onto the high school campus. And what that would require is some additional space that was not included in option one and option two. That includes the demolition of that one of the older pieces of the building. Some of that space right now is reasonably underutilized currently. That would get further utilized in option one and option two. But it appeared to us as a kind of a logical place that if you needed to provide space, knowing how landlocked we are around the rest of the building with athletic complex in the rear and the parking, the bulk of the parking there on the right side, it was really the only logical space to look for something substantial to potentially bring on campus. So what that does is give us the ability to build a new two-story addition. It's kind of a bookend to the two-story addition done back in 2002, there on the left-hand side. So that allows us to basically keep the bulk of option two, bringing that forward into option three, but again, providing that two-story addition in option three, where the second level of that two-story addition would be essentially like an 8th grade academy. So the 8th graders would be somewhat isolated. But again, that provides an option that could be considered for growth and grade realignment, anything that might happen in the future in terms of providing a little relief at your middle school and an opportunity to bring 8th grade on campus. The other thing that is included in option three, you'll see an additional cafeteria space, bringing another 90 or 100 students on campus would require some additional dining space. And that's easily accommodated by kind of sliding that toilet component down to the right, providing a second overflow cafeteria space as well. So those are the three options. I'll be glad that, hey, I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions. I'll go through next steps first, and we can get into any questions. So I've got a timeline on the next slide. Really, you can see kind of all the activities. It's been a busy 4 months. We're going through, and we started back in February when we started the existing conditions assessment. So lots of work happened in each of these months. We're kind of building to this point, providing an update to you all as a board, and then again look to prepare a final report in August and come back with kind of a final report. We'll build on what we showed tonight and really have some exterior and interior images, hoping to build some excitement about what these spaces, some of these key spaces could look like as a project, and then some planning numbers for each of the three options for budget consideration, knowing that this fall you'll start looking at fall is always a busy time for the beginning of budget season. So that was really the big deadline, was to really provide the report for you all so you can start working with supervisors and see if there's the ability to do some sort of project going forward. I'll stop talking. Have you guys take any questions you all have? I believe you all have the slide deck as well. Certainly take as much time as you need. If we need to come back between now and August for a work session or have some sort of virtual meeting, is there any questions that you all might have as you dig into this even more? We'll be glad to answer anything you all might have as well.
Board members, questions, Dr. Burnett?
I have a question about right sizing the classrooms, and it would seem to me that that would be a high priority. And yet it's only in option 2 where we get to do that.
It's an option 3 as well.
Yes, but I'm assuming that there is a hierarchy of cost as we go down. And so it's maybe we won't get to it in option 2 or 3. And so I guess I'd like to ask Dr. Seitz, Mrs. Fleet, perhaps, how high a priority should that be as we think about this new structure? How important is it that we right size the classrooms for teachers to teach in?
And so part of what we've done in this work is, as Mr. Halsey has explained, is when we put together the options, we started originally with, we knew that the auditorium space was much needed. And then the other pieces were a lot of code compliance and those types of things that needed to come into place. What we didn't want to do was come out of the gates with an overwhelming project that would immediately, we wouldn't be able to realize in this division. And so to your point about the right size in the classrooms, it is very much a high priority for us. So the options that are presented here are certainly not a final of anything that we would see if we were able to move forward with any of the projects. That's when I call it the nitty gritty work would happen. And when you are defining exactly what the cost would be for all of those specific priorities. So if we said, we really like this option, but we like pieces of that option, that would be the next steps to move into with an architectural firm. Of course, when you have the presentation in August, then you'll have some idea of what those costs are. And I think that will help also better frame what the project would be, realistically for Middlesex County.
So we might decide to swap out something from option 2 and put the right sizing in option 1, for example.
I'm saying yes. I'm not the architect, so I haven't looked at that because you'll have these as options, and I look at these more as ideas
Right.
of what we can happen. You would not be able to take this and then say, hey, construction company, build this, then you still have to do the work to design. And please jump in to correct me on any of those things also.
Yeah, it's a lot of times the sequence in projects like this is that we'll do a master plan, or an architectural firm will do a master plan. Will not be presumptuous, beyond the master plan study, but you'll do a master plan study that really documents the existing condition and do a really kind of 30,000-foot level of some ideas and some potential big picture options about how a school might be renovated, reimagined, whatever the terminology you might want to use. There might be something that comes out of a master plan study that a community or school division latches onto, and that this is the thing that we need to do. So that might evolve into an architectural project. Sometimes the next step will be building on a master plan and doing a conceptual study. So that's when you start to really define a project. So that might be a logical next step for you all, is to take this document. You can re-advertise, do an RFP for a conceptual study that might start to do a deeper dive into what a project might be. So that's when you might start taking pieces and parts. You do some additional engagement with the community and with leadership and staff. There might be a hybrid there, and that might be when you start to look at a really deep dive into specific sections of specific curriculum. The biggest thing that right sizing classroom does today is that provides teachers with the ability, a little more elbow room to reconfigure the classroom throughout the course of the day. So the old VDOE standards were about 620 square feet per classroom. That's legacy stuff from the 50s and 60s. So now we're up to somewhere between, I think the VDOE standards say 700, but really 750 is kind of the starting point. We've done a number of high schools where we do core classrooms at 800 square feet. So that extra 180 square feet inside of a core classroom gives a teacher a lot more flexibility to divide students up into smaller groups during the course of the day or a section, so they can do different types of instructional material. This gives you more elbow room. What that conceptual study might do is to do a really deep dive into the master schedule and start looking at enrollment per section. So you can start to look at, well, I've got X number of sections in this content area, and they're being taught in 620 square foot classrooms. We might right size some of the existing classrooms, but not all of the existing classrooms, because you might have a number of sections where you've got 12 or 14 students, and that might work great in 620 square feet. There might be a balance, but a conceptual study would really dig into a lot more detail and also start to define costs a little bit more. These are going to be very big picture planning costs. We'll provide ranges, especially in this kind of market when this stuff, materials and labor goes up daily, it seems like. So we're going to provide ranges for each option. A conceptual study might start to drill down into a little more detail in terms of cost estimates. So that might be the next logical progression that you all might choose to go down.
Under all of the options, would the entire school be ADA compliant?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That was, the toilets are kind of a given when you do any sort of renovation project. I think that in any of the options, the level of renovation that would happen within the building would trigger in the building code the need to make everything ADA compliant. And we're not too far off. There were just those three areas where there isn't an ADA compliant vertical transition. And those are pretty simple. We've got ways to solve that in each of the three options. Somebody else might have other ideas, but I think in any project, the entire facility would end up becoming ADA compliant.
Are there any outside facade structural changes that you have conceived of doing to improve the look of the building?
I think at the front door, you're going to see an image that starts to widen the existing front door just to provide a little more breathing room. That bottleneck, there's just two double doors that bring into the building. I think the images that we're going to show and develop, we've already started developing, but we'll show them in August. When we come back at the new public entry back to the auditorium and gymnasium and auxiliary gym component is going to be respectful to the architecture of the old building. I think that's some of the charm of the building, not to introduce a bunch of glass and steel and something modern. That's not what the school's about. And I think the widened main front door that we show will be very in keeping with what's there now. If that's the right answer. But I think this is a project where if we were to do it, we would be respectful of the existing architecture. Certainly the built structures that were part of the exterior outdoor athletic facility is the same way. It looks like a campus. It looks like it all belongs together. And I think the images that we're going to show build on that.
And for instance, the science labs and what have you, are there plans in every option? Well, let's just say option one, since that is the least invasive of the building. Are there plans to upgrade all of those facilities?
That would all be absolutely.
Okay.
So getting a little ahead, looking at budget options, what we like to do is look at, make some assumptions about the level of renovation that might happen in areas of the building. So areas of the building that might not have the walls being moved, but we're going to do new HVAC technology, finishes, lighting, those kind of things. That gives one level of renovation. We build on that. So if we're moving walls, that'll be a different level of renovation. And then building on that, if we're getting into a lot of infrastructure, under slab work, piping, toilets, that continues to build. So we'll start to build planning budgets based on those different levels of renovation. But we will start even in option one that every surface and space gets touched, even if we aren't right sizing those classrooms. So science labs will get renovated. It would look like, even in option one, that it would look like essentially a new school when it's completed.
Okay. I guess that was what I was trying to get to. Are some parts of the building going to look new, even though they are old, but they've been renovated, and others going to look like they just look now?
Right, yeah, I think that's, if during a conceptual study and you start to have funding discussions with the board of supervisors and a project budget starts to emerge, that might get dialed back, but I think starting out these kind of studies, especially given the condition of the structure, like I said, we have good bones to work with. But it's an older school, older structure. I think the goal, is an architect that you're working with right now is to have the starting point is that we're going to touch every surface, and then from a planning purpose, budget perspective, it's going to be essentially a new school at the end of option 1.
Okay, I'm excited to see what you're going to bring us.
We're excited.
Anybody else have questions? Ms. Taylor, anything?
Great one.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time tonight.
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right, action items, Dr. Stein.
All right, the first one is appropriation request. That's actually on page 14. There's 2 parts to that. First is the carryover for the remaining balance that we have appropriated for Mosley Architects. Will be invoiced when they finish that project. So that's a portion of it. And then the second part is for, as you're aware, we've been discussing the JROTC program and the opportunity to partner with King and Queen. And so that would be for the additional funds or to support 10 students in that program and the transportation costs for that.
All right, is there a motion to approve the appropriations request as stated by Dr. Sykes?
So move.
Is there a second? Second. Are there any questions about those appropriations? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? All right. School fees.
School fees, they are updated annually. They are located on page 16. The only change is that the student activity fee at the middle school is increasing from $15 to $20 so that they're able to incorporate all the things that they need those monies for during the school year. But that is the only change in school fees.
Is there a motion to approve the updated school fees for 2022-23? So move. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Our language art textbooks.
Right, we have, from my presentation to posting that, sending that to families through the principals. We had 6 comments either to the Google form or directly to me through email. Comments included support for the curriculum and that it addresses the needs of the struggling reader and that it has a high interest level. There are points of discussion of some of the themes just relevant to history and social themes, the need to ensure just a safe environment. Some of the themes were somewhat heavy. So one, similar to the Holocaust theme, the theme for a better diet and making sure you're looking at your diet. That's a theme in there. So there were some comments about that, making sure that when our teachers present, and our teachers do this, they present it very well. They've already used the Holocaust theme last year and they went from Mouse and they did Mouse 2 as well. So they did a good job of ensuring that those weighty activities or those themes are balanced with some positive aspects of our society, which the units do as well. And of course, we'll be choosing 3 different units for each of the 3 grade levels. And so we'll make sure that we're balancing those units so that they're very appropriate for our students.
Is there a motion to approve the, I'm looking at the wrong one. Motion to approve the language arts textbook adoption for St. Cloud Walker.
So moved.
There's second.
Second.
Any questions for Dr. Bishop about this? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? Right. Our school board policy revision on first reading.
Yeah, so we have one on first reading. And that is policy JFC-R, which is regulation, standards of student conduct, located on page 20. You'll see that the revision is much longer. And that is, the regulations are being updated to match the reporting categories and the reporting codes to the Department of Education. And so this regulation also is much more specifically lists the types of interventions and responses, and so that parents and students are aware of anything that's in violation of the code of conduct and what a potential consequence or intervention or response could be to that.
Is there a motion to approve JFC-R on first reading?
So moved. I just wanted to say, I think that the revision is a significant improvement.
Yes, I agree. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes, I agree. I think it is a significant improvement that, and it's easy to find what you're looking for, which was not so easy before. And yes. Thank you all for redefining this and listing it the way it is. Any more comments or questions? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, second reading on the, let's see, we have as listed A through double G that we approved on first reading at the June meeting. Dr. Seitz, any other updates from what you gave us in June?
No updates. Any suggestions or changes that we made during that meeting have been incorporated into this for the second reading, but no additional changes or updates.
Is there a motion to approve the listed school policy revisions on second reading A through GG?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions about any of these for Dr. Seitz? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's carried. All right, we have already seen the MHS renovation plans. Anything else to add, Dr. Seitz?
No, I would say that the team at Mosley Architects has been great to work with. We've had many meetings, either where they came and met with us. We've done a lot through Zoom meetings also, which is nice that we could schedule those quickly. They've taken, they would take our feedback and then they would incorporate that into what they were presenting to us at the next time we got together. So I will say that it's been a great partnership with them, and I'm looking forward to their presentation in August and really giving you all and the community something that you can really kind of look at and see what it will look like and what it could look like, I should say.
All right, the floor is open for public comment. Floor is now closed for public comment. Dr. Seitz, anything new for us?
Not anything new. I just wanted to, share that summer is certainly not downtime in school divisions for the departments that are coming in. All of our departments are working on updating handbooks and reports and technology and maintenance and really staying on top of everything that's needed as we prepare for the opening of the school year. New teachers report 4 weeks from today. So it is
Coming back.
We still have time. I had a teacher over here. But we, the hiring is going well. We're in a better situation than we were last year, although we still have some vacancies that we've shared, but our departments are definitely rocking and rolling to get everything updated and ready.
Is there any old business to come before the group? Tomorrow night, the Board of Supervisors is holding its public hearing on the rezoning of the property across the street, which I went to the Planning Commission and delivered our request for their consideration to restrict the type of business that could go in there. I plan to go tomorrow night to the Board of Supervisors and once again give them our request that they restrict the type of businesses that can go in there. I have done some research and have passed on to the chairman of the board some things that they do in Henrico. When they are rezoning, they can restrict. And one of the types of businesses they do restrict are gun shops. And so I've passed that on to the board in hopes that they will give strong consideration to the fact that we really do not want that type of business located across from our high school. And so if anybody else is available tomorrow night, it means at 7 o'clock, and I will be giving our view on that. At our last finance meeting, joint finance meeting with the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Walker suggested that the two boards set up a committee that would investigate the possibility of sharing some maintenance or in-house business operations, let's put it that way, operations that possibly we could look at how we could do them together, which would make it much more feasible financially or economically. And so we agreed to get together to do that. We need 2 board members who would be willing to participate in that committee. Dr. Burnett, did I hear you were volunteering for that?
I'd be happy to.
I thought so. So Dr. Got to break these new people in.
It's part of my pledge process. Right?
Yes, it is. Is there anyone else who would be interested in serving on this committee?
What are the meeting times?
They're usually daytime. I need to retire. So. I'm happy to start. I'm happy to start on this committee, and maybe as we look into it and see what the possibilities are, if someone has particular interest in those possibilities, I'm happy to relinquish my position on that committee.
We have,
Yes.
we've investigated a lot of this
We
in the
did.
past.
We
This
did.
is not a new
No, it's not new.
something.
Mr.
And,
Walker said
I
that.
would like to speak to whoever's going to be on that committee about things that we've looked over in the past and
We did,
how they can work or not work.
right.
So I'll be happy to just advise.
All right. That's great.
Only because I've been there
Mhm.
3 or 4 times.
Yeah, we have looked at it before, as was stated.
Yeah,
Maybe we can get a cup of coffee together.
we can indeed. Yes, sir.
We talk about Ireland and
Mhm. Yeah,
All right.
glad to help.
Any,
try to let you all know
let's
what's
see, that's
going
the only new business I had. Anything else anybody have for the good of the group? All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
so move.
I believe we have a so moved and a second there. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 We are adjourned.